Hello, my name is Jim Henson, and welcome to the Supporting the Growth of Small Food Business session as part of the Ohio CDC Association annual conference. For today's agenda, we're going to start with a small breakout, and then I will get us started with discussing financing. We will have a small poll. Leslie will then discuss COVID community engagement, another poll. Brian will discuss the local food action plan, and then after a brief stretch, we'll have a few minutes to ask questions. We're going to do our best to minimize technical challenges, but we know anything could go wrong. That's just the reality, but we're going to get through it together. Before we get started, a few quick housekeeping notes. This session is being recorded, so you can access it later. And there is a link which should be in the chat to the Dropbox materials for the session. If you'd like to turn off your camera, feel free to do so, but we encourage you to have it on during breakouts and group engagements. Feel free to toggle settings to speaker view or grid view. This is in the top right of settings. Speaker view highlights the speakers, and the grid view shows all the boxes. Closed captioning can be accessed by clicking Otter AI on the top left of your screen. It will open another window. We have everyone muted to eliminate background noise. Chat is being monitored by questions. Please send your questions into the chat or to privately send to an individual person. Select the drop-down menu to find that specific person to send a message to. Finally, be sure to visit our exhibitor space, check out some of the conference's sponsors. Link is in the chat. Thank you to all the sponsors. At this point, through the wonders of Zoom, we will be breaking out into our small groups. 2 questions that maybe could get you all started breaking the ice. Number 1, why did you join this session? And number 2, what role do you play in supporting food business? All right, well, I hope everyone had a great breakout session. I will get us started with the discussion on FCAP. So to get us started, Finance Fund simplifies the complexities of the financing process to help good ideas come to life, ideas that change systems, create jobs, address community needs, and improve quality of life for people. A little bit about Finance Fund. Finance Fund Capital Corporation, or I will call it FCAP, is a nonprofit, centralized community development financial institution, a CDFI, with a mission to connect underserved communities with public and private capital. We do this by providing flexible loans and creating permanent jobs. A little more about us. FCAP is the state of Ohio's Healthy Food Financing Administrator through our Healthy Food for Ohio program. In 2014, a task force convened including over 50 statewide stakeholders in the food access space to address the lack of healthy, affordable food for over 2 million Ohioans. The Healthy Food Financing Task Force included public and private organizations representing public health interests, the food retail industry, economic development, social services, and beyond. We work to map the need for food access in Ohio, finding pockets of deep need in rural and urban communities alike. The task force created 10 policy recommendations, chief among which was the creation of a publicly seated community development entity, administered Healthy Food for Ohio program that brings FCAP here today. So we do this through a number of methods. As I mentioned, we have flexible loans to for-profit businesses and community-based nonprofit organizations. We also have grants. We have grants for healthy food, but we also have our PD and ED grants. We support economic development areas in low-income and high-distressed areas via federal and state programs. So this is like your new markets, tax credits, historic tax credits. And really the goal is to create permanent private sector jobs. So through the Healthy Food for Ohio program, we have 31 healthy food projects serving over 320,000 people. This is in 14 counties, 59.5 million invested, and created 1,870 jobs. One of our projects that has received significant attention is that of Campbell's Market in MacArthur. The entire county of Vinton without a grocery store for 4 years, until FCAP was able to work with the state of Ohio and community lenders to bring the Campbell family to operate a family-run grocery store in the county seat that is still flourishing today. In Cleveland, FCAP was able to support a food hub that serves as an incubator for a number of local food entrepreneurs, and is now learning a test kitchen space to get home and garage-based purveyors off the ground. In Toledo, we partnered with ProMedica to bring mobile market to fruition. This market can operate downtown to serve business professionals and be nimble enough to drive into neighborhoods lacking a traditional grocer. The flexibility of this program allows the size and scope of project to vary, from new builds to renovations and small footprint to full service grocer. We have worked with rural growers and urban convenience stores and would love to hear about your needs that you see in your communities. So the various programs that we will work with, for instance, food retail, but can be other value chain projects, growers, distribution concepts. As I mentioned, we have acquisition, construction, and renovation projects. We have financed equipment and working capital for things like inventory. We would like to see underserved communities, typically a food desert or something like that, but if you've got a great idea, we'd like to hear it. We've also got loans and a few small dollar grants to kind of help you get started or kind of get you off the ground. Underwriting requirements. These can vary depending on whether or not it's a loan or a grant, but we would like to understand the management, their background, if they have any experience with operating a healthy food project. We would like to see some projections. Obviously for the larger projects like a full-scale grocery store or a smaller footprint, we would like to see some sort of market or feasibility study. Detailed project costs, again, we would like to see kind of where you think you're going to be spending the money and kind of how you got to that point. And we'd like to discuss site control. Is there going to be a need to be an environmental review? That's going to depend a lot on whether or not it's a new build or it's an existing facility. And your vendor relationships. Who's your distributor, who's your wholesaler? A lot of vendors will offer assistance with things like product mix and what sales to put on and where to kind of put your product. So in closing, please tell us about your project, but I would be remiss if I didn't give a special thank you to the Ohio CDC Association for having us here today. FCAP's big sister affiliate finance fund has worked closely with CDC Association since our inception over 30 years ago. The association is a critical convener, not just as this conference, but year-round for those of us who are focused on community development. So thank you, Nate, Lisa, and all the colleagues for all the ongoing work that you do. Thank you. There we go. And with that, I will hand it over to Lisa. Oh, there's a poll. All right, well, it looks like the answer is apple cider. And Leslie, it's all you.
Let me make sure I'm unmuted, and hopefully my screen is being shared. It doesn't seem to want to go from the slideshow. So thank you, Jim. It's great to have you do the toss. The Finance Fund has been an investor, a supporter of Acenet's food enterprise centers since 1995. So that is a long time in terms of some of the partnerships that we've had. And sorry for the technical difficulties here. I don't know why it doesn't. There we go. Yay. Okay. So I see a lot of familiar faces, many friends, and many new colleagues here on the call this morning. For those of you who might be a little less familiar with the Appalachian Center for Economic Networks, Acenet has been around since 1985, and we have really worked in the farm and food sector since our inception. A lot of our early stage work was really assisting farmers develop and strengthen farmers markets, look at CSA opportunities, and really transition from wholesale markets to more direct marketing options. But I think what we've discovered along the way is that we really need to have a holistic approach when we work with farmers and food entrepreneurs. So as I mentioned earlier, Acenet started to experiment with the development of food enterprise centers back in the 1990s. We opened our Food Ventures Center on our Athens incubator campus in 1996. And to present day, we've served over 450 different food or farm-based businesses, really reaching not just in southeastern Ohio counties, but even having folks come from West Virginia, Eastern Kentucky, and even Pennsylvania come and use both our services and our business incubation facilities. Over the last 10 years, we've developed an additional food enterprise center on our Nelsonville Business Incubator campus called the Nelsonville Food and Farm Enterprise Center. And that has really allowed us to expand our capacity and help many of our food processors particularly access a larger market share. So they might be growing their business, selling through regional wholesale channels, but we do have some long-term enterprises that are even selling nationally as well. So our services to support food businesses really run the gamut from very hand-holding, high-touch technical assistance, so that kind of one-on-one support, especially that farmers and food entrepreneurs need, business incubation, having a variety of different types of licensed facilities, and people use it in all different ways. We have many clients who have their own locations, their own processing facilities, but use our centers as a distribution hub. I think one of the things that has been probably most successful and has really set us apart from many of the other kitchen incubator or food enterprise centers across the US is we've always taken a very market-driven approach. So helping entrepreneurs access markets, analyze through various stages of business what makes sense for them in terms of where is the best margins, how do I reach profitability? And as an economic development organization, Acenet really sees it as an important partnership to help both our farmers and especially our food processors hopefully create not just a rural livelihood for themselves and their families, but also create jobs. It's something that we desperately need in the Appalachian counties of Ohio. So we have staff who help folks navigate, sometimes the challenges of the food regulatory environment, a lot of product development assistance. And like the finance fund, we recognize that in this sector, we need investment. So we oftentimes help our entrepreneurs access capital. In recent years, we've gotten more innovative, probably helping folks figure out how to do Facebook fundraisers or even crowdfunding. Workforce development is another key piece, but I think to a large degree, it's very focused on helping our entrepreneurs find the right human resource needs met within their enterprises, especially as they grow. So I wouldn't say we have a strong workforce program. A lot of times it's very much directed to the needs of our tenants in our food facilities or the clients that we serve throughout the region. So boy, things have really changed, haven't they? COVID, I think, has really shown a spotlight on some of the challenges that we all face within our entrepreneurial networks. Acenet does work with entrepreneurs outside the food and ag sector, but I think what we've really noticed and what we continue to reflect upon over these last 6 to 7 months is that, if anything, it has accentuated some of the gaps and some of the obstacles that we have within our communities. Food security has always been an issue in southeastern Ohio, and I think throughout Ohio, whether you're working in an urban core, in a neighborhood, or whether you're providing support to community members in a rural township, we have a lot of the same challenges. So what we've seen is definitely a growth in our farmers markets. Customers, I think, feel a little more safe being able to shop in an open air context. We've seen a lot of new partnerships emerge in terms of food businesses pivoting and making sure there's healthy food access, especially to school kids and families, since many of the schools have been closed both this spring and still the challenges I think we're all facing as schools reopen this fall. So we would encourage you to check out our website, acenetworks.org. One of the I think, amazing partnerships we have in Southeastern Ohio is that we work with many other anchor organizations like Rural Action and Community Food Initiatives. So as one CDC, we do not shoulder this work alone. We do it with many other partners, really probably 30 plus different partners just in the food and farm sector. So as I mentioned earlier, you know, access to capital is obviously an ongoing challenge. Many of our processors now have been able to reach new markets because supply chains have been changing. So we've been helping people. Snowville Creamery, one of our larger fluid milk, yogurt, and cheese producers, has been using a variety of different funding strategies to be able to install new equipment and really expand their product line as well as reach new markets. And then I think the other partnerships right now include how do we create new granting programs from small grants, $500 to maybe $5,000 up, just to help businesses survive. You know, many of us are, as supporters within our economies, very challenged by the anxiety I think our entrepreneurs have, whether you're serving people in a business incubator or through a Main Street program. A lot of folks are on the brink. We're happy that we've been able to help people access EIDL loans or the Paycheck Protection Program. But that seems like ages ago, I think, for many of us right now. So how do we make sure that there's more access to capital, especially for folks, people of color within our communities? How do we make sure that low-income economies, low-wealth communities still have the access to capital they need to support their entrepreneurial ecosystems? The Resilience Fund is a new partnership, and we've been making some small seed grants through that program. We need to do some additional funding, but I think it's a great example how philanthropy and CDCs have come together pretty nimbly and pretty quickly to address some of those challenges. The other thing that I will reflect upon that I think has happily surprised us in recent months is we see a customer loyalty really being strengthened through this COVID period. So many of the loyal customers of our food and farm businesses recognize that they need to provide continued support. It might be patronizing their favorite restaurant through carryout, maybe buying gift certificates, but we've tried to create collaborations where, as things change, people's operating hours can sometimes change from week to week. How do we do collaborative marketing? So in the last month, with one of our other technology tenants, we launched loveathensohio.com. I would encourage you to check out that website as well. So I'm going to do a time check with our moderators. I have seen from my own timekeeping that I'm pretty much at time. So maybe we're ready for the next poll, Laquan. I anticipate more questions and look forward to your interest in our programs here in both Appalachia, Ohio, but some of the work we do throughout Central Appalachia as well.
Leslie, if you want it, you can take a little more time. We are a little bit ahead of schedule.
Okay, well, great. So I think some of the other interesting reflections I would share around COVID is the opportunity now to continue to reinforce with customers the importance of supporting local food. We saw some disruptions, especially I would say within meat supply early on during the crisis. And one of the things we've noticed is many of our livestock producers have just had phenomenal sales, oftentimes selling direct at farmers markets and being out of supply within the first hour and a half of the market's opening. So what I'm hoping is we're seeing not only our food and farm entrepreneurs change and adapt, I'm looking forward to the fact that our customers are maybe practicing new behaviors and staying more committed to supporting local. So I anticipate that we as CDCs, as the folks who provide the business counseling to many of these food and farm businesses, that we need to really stay on top of some of these market trends. Some of these shifts, I think, are to our advantage. And as whatever normal looks like in the future returns and whatever recovery process occurs over the coming months, I think we should be really attentive to helping our food and farm entrepreneurs do business in perhaps different ways. Acenet often talks about what we do as doing economic development differently. And I think what COVID is teaching us is that we need to be more nimble. We need to look at innovation. We need to embrace technology in new ways. And we need to really deepen our collaboration. I'm hoping that hashtag that we all see all the time now, we're in this together, really continues to resonate as we come out the other end of this pandemic. I think with the food sector particularly, we see folks who are probably as individuals and as family households more attentive to healthy eating. You know, people have gotten back into the habit of sitting around the dinner table, looking maybe to source more local and healthful items from their local markets, from their local retailers. So I look forward, I think as many of us do, in 2021 and hopefully in 2022, as things return to normal, that this commitment to local, this commitment especially to building a more resilient local food economy in our neighborhoods, in our townships, in our rural places, really can make a difference and create much more viable and sustainable enterprise development for the communities and people that we serve. Okay, how did I do, Laquan?
You did pretty good, but if you want 4 more minutes, you can have it.
Wow, I don't know how I've gone through over 12. That's great. Well, I would suggest that we, really think about some of the ways that we can partner with other educational institutions and agencies. I just went back to the previous slide that really focuses on addressing some of the food insecurity challenges that we face. And I'm sure that many of you face them in your communities as well. So coming up with new solutions, the mobile veggie van, the photograph in the upper right-hand corner of the slide deck shows our coordinator, Carrie Carson of the Appalachian Accessible Food Network. The veggie van is a partnership between Community Food Initiatives, Acenet, and Rural Action. And a lot of this is transporting local food from the Chester Hill Produce Auction, having it aggregated in Acenet's Food Ventures Center, and then distribute it in location in one of our northern villages, the village of Gloucester in Athens County. This happens every Friday afternoon. We've also developed a lot of ways that people can either double up their SNAP benefits or even have access through some of the community dinner programs to really be able to have healthy food for their family members. So again, I would encourage you to go to acenetworks.org. We have a whole section on the Appalachian Accessible Food Network. You can learn more about some of our programs and our partnerships. Many of our, I would say, communities of faith partnerships have also had to pivot. Obviously, aggregate meals, some of the feeding programs, we can't do it appropriately. So a lot more delivery is happening now. And it's been very refreshing to see both the public and private partners really come together and very quickly to address some of the food insecurity challenges we face in Appalachia, Ohio. I feel like I'm stretching.
All right, you're good. We can transition to the next person.
Okay, thank you, Laquan. I think we're ready for the next poll,
Right.
and then we'll do the toss to Brian.
All right, can everybody hear me all right? Okay. Thank you to Ohio CDC and to my co-presenters here. Finance Fund has been a great partner on a lot of different projects here in Columbus, Franklin County, where I'm located. And Acenet is such a wonderful, really statewide and national model. So thanks to both Jim and Leslie. I do want to start my presentation by registering an official complaint with that first poll, which I think was closed with 4 votes. That's just some classic vote rigging there. So you know, I think we need to revisit some of those results and take a closer look. Okay, I'm going to share my screen and then we can get into my portion of the presentation here. Thank you. Okay. Hopefully everybody can see that all right. So my name is Brian Estabrook, and I am a food systems planner with Franklin County Economic Development and Planning. That's located in Central Ohio, where Columbus is. My primary role is with the implementation of the Columbus and Franklin County Local Food Action Plan. And my presentation is going to be about the Franklin County Food Business Portal, which is a resource that we developed to support small food businesses here locally. But before I get into that, I want to give a little bit of a background on where that came from. So both Columbus City Council and the Franklin County Board of Commissioners have a history of strong support for various local food initiatives, including community garden grants, support for food business incubation programs, and various types of food access programs. However, there was no strategic plan that addressed the broader needs from a holistic perspective of the local food system. And that hindered our ability to identify and effectively address challenges related to food access and public health, economic development, and food waste, for instance. So the Columbus and Franklin County Local Food Action Plan is the result of a 2-year planning process involving both city and county and various private and nonprofit partners. The final plan was adopted in 2016 as a policy platform by both Columbus City Council and the Franklin County Board of Commissioners. And you can read more about the plan at columbus.gov/LFAP. And that will be in the slides as well here later. A little bit more about the plan. The vision of the Local Food Action Plan is a fair and sustainable food system that benefits our economy, our environment, and all people. And you can kind of see that one of the unique facets of the Local Food Action Plan is that it really views food and the food system from various perspectives, from the perspective of our economy, our shared environment, and also just what people need, the benefits for all people. So there's a lot pushed into that, and it keeps us on our toes in terms of what to focus on. The plan has 4 goal areas. The focus here is going to be on goal C, which is focused on increasing the role of food as a driver of economic development. We're all here because we want to support local food and local food businesses. So a lot of this may be fairly obvious, but I want to state anyway some of the benefits. The local and regional food system is an important driver of economic development. It creates jobs. It supports a variety of businesses, including farms and restaurants. It's a vital component of household budgets and also business expenditures. Local food businesses are critical for the economic health and well-being of our communities. They provide employment. They create a multiplier effect in the local economy. They offer access to healthy, nutritious food. They create placemaking and positive perceptions of one's own neighborhood. And they can also respond effectively to the needs and constraints of their local community. The local food economy as a whole also enhances community resiliency. It shortens supply chains, it reduces carbon emissions, and it also reduces reliance on the global food supply chain, which can experience shocks that are out of our control. And we've seen that obviously this year with the COVID-19 pandemic. So the Franklin County Food Business Portal is what I'm here to talk about. And I'm going to walk you through a little bit about what the portal is, how it works, and why it may be useful for you and your community as well. So as part of our work to implement the Local Food Action Plan and support the growth and development of local food businesses, we brought together a group of stakeholders here in Franklin County to create the Franklin County Food Business Portal. And the portal is a free compilation of existing resources and services to help Franklin County entrepreneurs successfully plan, launch, and grow a food business. As far as I'm aware, it's the only food business portal in existence. There are many types of general purpose business portals for small businesses. As far as I'm aware, this is the only one that focuses specifically on the needs of food businesses. We saw a need for the portal because there are so many resources out there for small businesses. They are everywhere. There are so many of them. However, they are not well organized in any kind of way. And a lot of times, access and knowledge about those resources travels within insular kind of groups. That knowledge and access is not equitably distributed. Many existing and potential entrepreneurs, particularly minority and disadvantaged and under-resourced entrepreneurs, are not aware of those available resources or how to access them. So one of the major goals here was to flatten access and make it easier for entrepreneurs of all kinds to launch and grow a food business. These are some of the resources offered on the Franklin County Food Business Portal. So for instance, business planning, business incubation, registration and taxes, employees and human resources, financing, specific food system expertise, marketing, networking and mentorship, regulatory compliance. We also offer free access, or I should say access to free business advising services through the portal with OSU Extension, which obviously focuses on a range of food and agriculture specific resources, and then also the Small Business Development Center, which is a statewide free resource. So I'm going to give you a little tour of the Food Business Portal. So hopefully everybody can see this. So this is the front page of the Food Business Portal. So at the top here, you'll see a red bar that is access to some specific COVID-19 resources. The portal was not designed to directly address COVID-19. It was most of the planning and development happened well before the pandemic. But we do have a dedicated page to link to those resources and to offer support for businesses. We do offer Google Translate services here to try to make that accessible for as many different folks as we can. At the bottom, there is an About Us page where you can learn more about how the portal was developed, where the information on the site comes from. There's also a Talk to an Expert section. I mentioned that you can get support from OSU Extension and Small Business Development Center, and that's right down here. The primary way to navigate resources on the Food Business Portal is through the Plan, Launch, and Grow menu. And so as you can see, there are multiple options here. Here's your business registration and taxes, create a business plan, employment and human resources, government contracts, various financing resources. I'm going to give you a little tour going through a typical path that a business might follow. So I'm going to click on Create a Business Plan. This brings you to a landing page where you have some additional options, and I'm just going to choose Business Planning 101 here. Actually, instead of that, let's follow following the law, because that might be a little more interesting. So this page provides resources related to various ways to stay compliant with the law, which is very important for a food business as they're working on planning their business. Things such as business licenses, food safety, and additional local, state, and federal regulations. You'll see a checklist on the right that allows you to track your progress, which you can check and uncheck as you work on that. And then we have options for obtaining legal advice here, which is highly advised if you are a food business looking at how to remain compliant with the law. And then at the bottom, there are expanding sections, which we call accordions, to give you access to additional resources. So for instance, you click on business licenses and that opens up, and here's a lot of information about how to register with the Ohio Secretary of State, for instance, and use the Ohio Business Gateway and all of those things. Perhaps you want to learn about food safety, Columbus Public Health, Franklin County Public Health, your local health departments are going to be important there. There's also resources from, for instance, the Ohio Department of Agriculture. So there are many different kinds of resources here that you can follow. Perhaps instead, and I'll go back to the homepage here, you're interested in learning about financing. And so we'll go down here to plan and then financing a business. On the financing page, you can learn about, there's the checklist again. Here's various resources for instance, calculating your startup costs, which is important. Some basic financing options, including ECDI and KIBA, which most people probably know about. And then at the bottom, there's access to capital loans, there's equity and ownership, and then development finance. So for instance, if you click on loans, there's education here about what are loans, how can loans be used. We're trying to think about folks who maybe have not accessed these kinds of resources before and are less familiar with how they work. And then there's information on different micro lenders, some subsidized nonprofit lenders, and there's finance fund right there, FCAP. And so, as you can see, there are just a ton of different resources here. One last thing I want to note, on the bottom right of every page, you'll see a Find Resources section. If you click on that, this is another way to navigate these resources. You'll see a menu here that pops up with some options to select. If you select an option, it will show you resources in that category. For instance, let's take a look at incubators and accelerators. Let's say you're a business, you're looking for some business incubation services. You select that, and then options pop up underneath that. So locally here, we have the ECDI Food Fort, we have 1400 Food Lab, Rev1 Ventures, Social Ventures. Each of these will give you information about those entities and then a phone number and a website to contact. There are many, many, many different kinds of incubators and accelerators here locally. So we'll uncheck that, and maybe instead of that, you're an under-resourced business. You are an entrepreneur from a historically marginalized group. and you want to see what's available for under-resourced entrepreneurs. So we'll check that. And then we find the Minority Business Assistance Center, for instance, which is a free resource. The ECDI Women's Business Center. You have the Asian American Commerce Group, the Central Ohio African American Chamber of Commerce. So we've done a lot of work here collecting all these resources, making them easy to find and easy to understand. So back to my presentation here, and then I'll close up and we'll move on. The portal, one of the major reasons why I'm sharing this with you is that we think about the portal as a model that other communities could use. We based our portal on other general purpose small business models from Minneapolis, Los Angeles, Kansas City, and there are others. These are linked here, by the way, so if you look at my slides later, which you should be able to gain access to those, you can click on these and explore those for yourself. But this portal model, we see it as highly replicable and adaptable. And it's a way that you can provide general purpose support for any small business in any sector, or if you want to provide specific support in a particular business sector. We estimate that around 80% of the resources available in our portal could be useful for any small business in any sector in Franklin County. And about 50%, or I should say over 50% of those resources would be useful for any entrepreneur statewide. So even folks who are not food businesses could benefit from this as well. Very quickly, hitting some lessons learned here. You know, we learned a lot through this process, and I'd be happy to talk one-on-one with anyone who wants to learn more about this later. So, but just to hit some of these quickly, it's important to work directly with your audience and understand who you're actually providing this for. Strategic planning is really important. One of the benefits here is that I work for local government. I was able to provide staff time and support for this project. And so it's important. This is something that would be much harder to pull off without staff support, without strategic planning, without somebody in a paid position to work on this. Being very flexible, making sure that you can change and adapt the model throughout the planning process. A strategy for long-term sustainability, how will the site be updated, for instance? How will it remain relevant over time? And we had a crash course on that right away with COVID-19. And then making sure that you have buy-in and active participation from key community partners. We have a member on our project team that was from Finance Fund and provided direct support for this. So thanks to Finance Fund for their support of this project. What's next for Franklin County in this space? We're thinking hard about how to expand support for food businesses in this pandemic age. Some potential opportunities for how to support food businesses moving forward. We're looking at new and diverse marketplace connections, revising some of our zoning codes, developing and expanding that middle supply chain infrastructure that local food businesses need to make the local and regional food system work. So again, there's a mini presentation on each of those I could give you. So if you're interested in learning more about that, you can certainly contact me. This is our local food team here in Columbus and Franklin County. And I'd be happy to talk to anyone more about this, answer any questions, and I'll pass it back to our moderator. Thank you.
All right, I think there's another poll coming.
So I heard the complaints of the people, and I would like to revisit that first poll. Take your time on this one.
Thank you, Laquan. That's responsive democracy right there. I like it.
It is.
That's what I'm here for.
All right. No love for the apples. We like cider, but no love for the apples today. All right. Well, I think at this point we're going to take a small, I guess, stretch break. So I guess if take a couple seconds, maybe stretch out, and when we come back, we'll have question and answer. Alrighty, well, I hope everyone got at least a chance to stretch their legs. It's a little different when you're at the conference and you're going from meeting room to meeting room, and today you're just kind of sitting in front of a computer screen all day. I guess let's open it up to question and answers. I did see one question to me from Anna Hurley. Yes, we can finance a small convenience store acquisition. I think my contact information has been made available to you. The other question that we got in from the chat was, have food trucks been an upward trend? Are there any lessons there? And maybe Leslie, I'll hand that one to you, maybe.
Sure. Thank you, Jim. Yeah, I was looking at that in the chat as well. The food truck, I would say, trajectory continued to grow over the last 5 years. Athens and our Food Ventures Center is part of a college town here with Ohio University. We also have, I would say, a very robust microbrewery distillery environment, and there's been great synergy between the food truck operators and some of the other small businesses where they can sell their and book time in partnership with some of the breweries and some of the wineries and distilleries. I think what we've seen now since COVID is so many food festivals, events have been canceled since March. So many of our food truck operators, those who essentially operate as tenants from our Food Ventures Center, have definitely pivoted. And many of them have either started to do more prepared foods, working with various agencies, or maybe either partnerships they've formed with other agencies that they can provide lunches or dinners or box lunches to. So again, with COVID, I keep wondering how this is going to upend some of those food truck businesses, but hopefully present new opportunities for them. We also, I would say, have a lot of different community event space, and many caterers and food truck operators are looking at the operation of ghost kitchens or even pop-up markets in some of these different locations. I think between March and now, everyone is just trying to figure out how do we do things that have a more outside component. And I think, going into the winter months now, we're going to have to become even more innovative and figure out how these folks can still have sales, keep their customers safe, and keep their employees safe in terms of any kind of food operation. Obviously, carry out and delivery is an opportunity for many of our food entrepreneurs moving forward.
Great. Brian, do you have anything you want to add to that before we get to the follow-up question about food trucks?
No, I was actually interested in answering the food truck question, if that's that was offered in the chat.
Go right ahead.
That's all right. Yeah, so thanks for the question about food trucks bringing fresh food to residents. Quickly, I'll give one example of that. There are many out there. and I'll actually put a link in the chat so that folks can go look at it themselves. Local Matters is a nonprofit located in Columbus, and they have the Veggie Van, which is a mobile grocer and food education program. And they park that mobile grocer around the city in some lower income and under-resourced neighborhoods, and provide subsidized access, affordable access to that food, as well as education on how to use the food. It's still in sort of a pilot stage, but it has been going now for about a year, and they're hoping to expand that effort in the future. So that's one example.
That is a great example. I was hoping you'd pick that one.
Yeah, the mobile market and Veggie Van concepts have really taken off. And I think we've seen them work and launched early on in more urban neighborhoods, but they've really translated to the needs that we have within rural places as well. One of our school districts in the Amesville area of Athens County repurposed one of their old school buses, and they've created sort of a Veggie Van where they run a circuit, and it's a choice pantry basically, and they have different location stops throughout their school district, which geographically is actually quite large. So they stop in, I think, 4 or 5 different other villages.
Great. I believe, and maybe Brian, you can correct me, it sounds like the Veggie Van uses local farmers as often as possible. We got a question about if the Veggie Van is operated by a farmer or local farmers. I think it's the latter.
Yeah, so it's operated by Local Matters, which Local Matters does have some community gardens that it runs, and does have various places where it can pull local produce. But yeah, they use local foods as much as possible.
Great. Well, I think we're just about out of time here. I think we're scheduled to stop at 11:30. Does anybody have any quick questions before we I guess, adjourn? Everyone has our contact information, so if they need it, they can. If not, I guess I'd like to end with a quote from Mahatma Gandhi. Truth never damages a cause that is just. I'd like to thank our presenters for joining us today. And I hope everyone enjoyed the session. Thank you, everyone.